All right, guys, welcome. I'm super excited to have a masterclass today. We're going to talk about the sourcing algorithm, and we're going to cover some different ways to source from different countries all over the world, including sourcing from China, from India, from Mexico, from Vietnam, and from USA. So I think it's a very important topic because the sourcing world is changing. We're seeing all the changes, especially sourcing from China with all of the COVID related lockdowns and reopenings. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So thank you everybody for pre-registering. We had over 80 people that pre-registered, and I did see a lot of interest sourcing from different countries. And I'm going to share some of those survey results with you as well. So because we are live today, if you can see and hear me, can you please type your name and where you're joining from in the chat? All right. And as we do that, again, today is a special masterclass. We're going to talk about how to source products from China, India, Mexico, Vietnam, and USA, which is a handful. All right. So I'm joining from Japan. It's 7 a.m. here, bright and early. So I'm curious where you guys are joining from. All right. And if you have any burning questions, feel free to type them in the chat as well. I will get to them throughout the training for today. It's going to be about 1 hour, and we're gonna go through a lot today. And then quickly, I'd like to welcome Chinedu from Miami. Welcome. Good to see you. Good to have you here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And people are coming in, and I know we have a lot to cover today. All right, so game plan for today. Sourcing is changing very quickly. I mean, the world just seems to be changing faster and faster as we're going through, post-pandemic. Things are opening up. Some places are not open yet. All right, and then we're gonna break down sourcing from the different countries: China, Vietnam, India, Mexico, and USA. And we're also going to review some of the products that can be sourced from each of these countries. And for those of you guys that stick around to the end, I wanted to share about a new sourcing event that I'm creating that I'm very excited about. And I hope that this will be helpful for you guys. All right. So also I'd like to welcome Lloyd from the Philippines and Pachi from Australia. Good day. Good to see everybody. All right. So I have some interesting data that I'd like to share with you guys first. Okay. So before this webinar, we had a survey of the audience. We had, I asked them which countries below are you most interested in sourcing from? And you can see there's a lot of interest sourcing from Mexico, sourcing from USA, and also continuing to source from China, as well as sourcing from other countries like Vietnam and India. But I was a little surprised, Mexico, wow, 38%. That's like over 1 out of 3. We're going to cover, we're going to touch upon Mexico today, all right? And also, where are you currently sourcing from? And no surprises here. The majority is sourcing from China, about 63.9%. And we're also seeing a lot of people sourcing from the USA, for about 14.5%. And I'm curious, if you are sourcing from the USA, are you doing private label? Are you manufacturing from the USA? Or are you doing like online arbitrage or retail arbitrage, going to your local Target or like garage sales to get inventory? I'd be curious. Feel free to drop that in the chat. I'd like to keep things interactive today, so we can make this as valuable as we can. All right, next. So the world of sourcing is changing, as we can see here. In this study conducted by Kima, they interviewed a group of US buyers and European buyers. The sourcing the source of their sourcing has changed. If you look at the data from 2019, 61% of these US and European buyers were sourcing from China, right? But as we go through the last 2 years, ever since early 2022, we're seeing that percentage has dropped from 61% to 47%. So that means about 14% fewer people are sourcing from China. And if you look at the other countries, the biggest riser is India. You can see in 2019, only 6% of people were sourcing from India. And now, as of 2022, it's up to 10%. Okay, so you can see that India is getting a lot of traction. India is growing very quickly, and we're going to go through that as well. And then also in the all others category on the far right, it has grown from 11% in 2019 to 20% in 2022. And all others would include Mexico, US, and other countries. It's not as granular, but you can see the general trend that China is shrinking, but it still represents a big majority. Okay. I just want to make it clear, I'm not saying that everybody should just leave China, because it's not simply possible. China still has the most, it has the breadth and the depth of the whole, the the product selection, the supply chain, the logistics, and many raw materials are only made in China. If you think of a lot of fabrics like synthetics, plastic injection molding, tooling, so you can't just simply eliminate China for most people out of the equation. But if you are sourcing from China, a lot of the supply chain experts, like, you see the Apples, you see the Nikes, they've instituted like a China plus one strategy, which means that they keep some of the manufacturing, like the essentials, in China, but they're adding other countries, for example, India or Vietnam, to get some cost savings. Okay, so I want to share that strategy, a China plus one strategy. All right. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. We're going to move quick. All right. So first off, I'd like to give you a review of China. So China is still the king of sourcing. All right. Pretty much everything under the sun, almost anything can be sourced from China. It has the broadest product selection. Most products, the first thing you think of is China. In terms of sourcing, it's relatively easy. I don't want to say it's easy, but you have online resources like Alibaba, like global sources, and it's just like the whole ecosystem in China is very developed. It's very experienced. They're very used to doing business with e-commerce and Amazon sellers, especially in the last few years. So it's relatively easy compared to the other countries that we'll cover. But on the flip side of the coin, it's not as cheap as before. Obviously, the costs have risen, the labor costs, even before the whole COVID pandemic, costs have been rising. So you've seen an exodus of companies sourcing out of China. Again, those big players like Under Armour, New Balance, shoes. A lot of them are going to other countries like Vietnam. So you're seeing that it's not as cheap as before because the labor costs have risen. The resources, the cost of electricity. There also have electricity shortages, and also the shipping costs. Obviously, we've covered that extensively. The whole perfect storm of supply chain. It cost upwards of $20,000 a container. We're still seeing costs much higher than before. Okay. Another factor that's very important to consider sourcing from China is in terms of the lead times. You're seeing even longer lead times, especially during the COVID lockdowns. There's a lot of uncertainties when it comes to not only if your factory is locked down, but your factory's raw material suppliers, if they're locked down, their subcomponent suppliers, or even like a bundled item. For one of my FBA products, we had a bundled accessory. So the main product was done, but they had trouble getting that little accessory from their other source because that accessories marketplace was affected by the COVID lockdowns, right? So it kind of has this ripple effect. Your whole supply chain is only as strong as your weakest link. And right now in China, even though at the time of this, Shanghai literally just reopened yesterday, right? Shanghai was in lockdown for about 2 months, and they finally opened the lockdown. People can go back to work. Public transportation is operating again, but who knows what's going to happen next week? If a lot of cases resurge, are they going to lock down again? That's one of the uncertainties right now, sourcing from China. So if you study the big players, I always like to learn from supply chain experts. They're already implementing these other strategies, incorporating other sourcing destinations in addition to China. All right. And then the other risk doing business in China is copycats, right? Everyone's heard of all the bad mouthing about the Chinese sellers. I'm not going to judge. There's good and bad people everywhere, right? But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of copycats. Sellers based in China. So your product could be copied very quickly. All right. So that's an overview of sourcing from China. And I'd like to take a question. Hasib, thanks for your question. What platform should we use for sourcing apart from Alibaba? That's a great question. It depends on where you're sourcing from. If you're sourcing from China, obviously China is still closed so we can't go to China right now. Even I can't go to China. I've lived in China for over a decade. My wife is Chinese and I can't get in, right? So online sourcing is probably your best bet right now. Besides Alibaba, there's another website I like to use called Global Sources, globalsources.com. They also have an online search directory, and they also have physical trade shows in Hong Kong twice a year. They've actually been around earlier than Alibaba. I like to think of Global Sources as less but more. There may be a less selection of suppliers, but the ones that are there, they tend to be more established, meaning many of them have exhibited in physical trade shows. And they are also strong in certain categories like electronics, fashion, apparel, luggage, and I think smart home technology as well. So you may want to check out that website, globalsources.com. All right. There's many other websites as well. We don't have time to cover everything. If we have some time at the end, we can circle back to that question. All right. So I hope that helps, Hasib. Let's keep going, guys. Great question. All right. So after China, we're looking at some of the other hotspots. So I'd like to highlight India. India is a rising star. It's growing very quickly. As you've seen from the data from 2019 to 2022, it's taken a lot of the sourcing market share, away from China. And I feel like it's a rising star. It's strong in certain categories like handmade products, eco-friendly products, products made out of wood, products made out of metal. And what's cool about India is you can come up with more unique products, not just your run-of-the-mill Me Too product, right? The reason is because is India's maybe like China, maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago in terms of their manufacturing, right? So their whole government is really trying to push manufacturing as a way to create jobs, to spur economic growth. But simply put, if you think of it as a race, China had a head start like 20 years on India, right? So India is still a little, I don't want to say primitive, but most of the manufacturing is like more handmade, more labor intensive versus China. It's more like, machine technology, automation, think of like that car factory with like the robotic crane arms instead of like real humans. So there's like 100 robotic arms in this Chinese factory and like one operator. Whereas in India, you'll see more people just like hands-on working on, these type of like labor intensive products. So that's one big difference I like to highlight between India and China. You cannot expect to get like a premium machine finished product in India as you could in China. Okay. Another key difference is whether it's worth the wait. India has a longer lead time, especially for your first order. It just takes longer to develop. And another thing is, a good thing is, English is widely spoken in India. So you'll have less of a language barrier, but there's a culture barrier because like the way of communications, the response times, like in terms of like following up, it's a little different from China. Okay. And it's like the deadlines are a little looser in India than in China. So that's another thing to consider. Is it worth the wait? Again, India is really strong in eco-friendly products. So organic cottons, jute products, products made of recycled materials. They're very strong in that. I just learned that in India right now, you literally will not see any plastic bags anywhere, not at the supermarket, not at the convenience store or restaurants. The real focus is on eco-friendly. So if that resonates with your product niche, definitely consider India. And I feel like another advantage of India is it's the whole way that they manufacture over there is a great way to differentiate your brand, because a lot of the manufacturers are small families or small villages. They're creating jobs for people. So it's one way that you can paint a brand story. One example I can think of is Tom's shoes. Tom's shoes was they were manufactured in South America, and they really benefited a lot of underprivileged communities, orphan children, and the fact that they were able to create these shoes in those local communities, and they would actually highlight that brand story. the story of the manufacturing, and also they would donate a pair of shoes for every pair that they sold. So there's ways that you can communicate this brand story because you are benefiting the local community in those countries. And that could be one way that you can differentiate your brand and possibly get a higher perceived value or even premium pricing in terms of your manufacturing. So that's kind of like not like more tangible benefit, but more of what do you call that, intangible benefit when it comes to sourcing from India. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Next, I'd like to highlight Mexico. All right. In terms of Mexico, we have all heard the term Pura Vida. The culture, the lifestyle is different. I wouldn't say it's more laid back. People have told me, sourcing from Mexico is more laid back. It's a little bit slower. It's not as fast paced as China. China has this work mentality called 996 culture. 996. If anyone has heard of that, let me know in the chat what that is. So 996 work culture in China. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. In Mexico, Okay, I'll go through the pros first and then the cons. The biggest pro is it's physically very close to the US. So if you're selling in the US, it's in the same time zone. Literally, it just has to cross the border. So that benefits you in terms of shorter shipping times, right? Rather than 90 days or having your container stuck on the port of Long Beach, you can just ship it across the border. It's much, much faster. It's much cheaper as well. Instead of 20K, it could possibly just be like 2K. So you'll have the cost savings there. And in terms of your cash flow and placing orders and turnover, the fact that you can get your orders more quickly means that possibly you don't have to place such huge orders as you would in China. So that means that you can free up your cash flow. You can turn your inventory a lot quicker. So that's another advantage sourcing from Mexico. Many of the supply chain experts I've spoken to, they're sourcing from Mexico that's one of the top reasons why, because you can cut down on your orders, your order sizes. So you don't have to commit 50K to an order. Maybe you can just reduce that to 10K and place 2 orders rather than one big order from China, if that makes sense. All right. Another advantage of Mexico is there's no tariffs. Right. I mean, everyone knows about the China tariff, the 25%, ever since it was instituted several years ago. It's still in place. Right. So that's an additional cost on your products, cost of goods that you have to consider. Right. Sourcing from Mexico, there's 0 tariffs. All right. There's actually a free trade agreement in North America between the US and Mexico. So many products, do your homework, guys, but many products may be duty free. So you really got to know your numbers, right? Talk to your customs broker, find out about these tariffs, these savings that you can get sourcing from Mexico. The labor costs may be higher, but you could save more on the tariffs, on the shipping. And so ultimately your landed cost could be less. So that's one thing that's very attractive about Mexico. All right. We're going to talk about the product availability a little bit later. We're going to run through that, but I just wanted to give you the key, very important things to know strategically about these countries first. All right. So in terms of the flip side, like some of the downsides to Mexico is their manufacturers are not as familiar with these types of Amazon type products, right? Or consumer products, whereas in China, most factories have manufactured products for Amazon sellers. In Mexico, you really got to hold their hand. You really have to educate them as to your product requirements, what you need in terms of the FNSKU, the barcodes, the product sizes, the product quality finish, a lot of these requirements. It's going to be their first time, going through this whole rodeo, right? It's going to be their first rodeo. So you really have to teach them the ropes. So definitely factor that into the learning curve. All right. You'll have to prepare more as well in a lot of the details, the specifications of the order, because they're simply not as experienced when it comes to these types of Amazon, e-commerce, consumer goods as China. All right. So that's an overview of Mexico, guys. Has anyone sourced from Mexico? Let me know. Okay, so going back to 996. Okay, so this is a fun fact. All right, so 996 work culture in China. You talk to anybody that works in China, this is like one of the most feared things, because this was actually popularized by Alibaba CEO Jack Ma. If you guys heard of Jack Ma, he's like the top entrepreneur in China. In Alibaba, they work really hard. 996 means they work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, so 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I mean, do the math. That's a 12-hour work day, but not just 5 days a week, 6 days a week, right? 996, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. Think about that. China is like, that's how, their economy grew so quickly. I mean, beyond like the other things, just like the work culture, the mindset, and it's expected. This is not out of the ordinary. This is expected, right? So that's why when I say, if you've been sourcing from China before, you can like, WeChat them, message them on like a Friday night, or even like a Saturday morning. I mean, most times you're going to get a reply, right? But don't expect the same from some of the other countries, because the work culture is not 996. All right. So I hope that helps, guys. All right, so let's keep going. Next, I'd like to cover Vietnam. Okay, Vietnam right now, you've seen a lot of growth. They've been a very big beneficiary of a lot more sourcing inquiries ever since the China tariffs. Why? Because sourcing from Vietnam, one of the benefits is you can circumvent those China tariffs, China-US at 25%. Okay, and then Vietnam also has free trade agreements with many other countries, including EU, European countries, Australia, as well as Southeast Asia countries like ASEAN. Okay, so if you're in one of those regions, definitely consider Vietnam because of these benefits. So what do I mean by free trade agreement? That means that there's no tariffs, and there could be low duties or even zero duties that you're paying on your product. So that's going to cut your landed costs. All right. And we've seen a lot of manufacturing going into Vietnam. The Prime Minister of Vietnam actually met with Apple CEO Tim Cook recently, and Apple is bringing in more manufacturing into Vietnam. If you look at your AirPods, right, look at the case. Where is it manufactured? I mean, like the early versions were made in China, but the more recent versions, if you look closely, some are made in Vietnam. Right, so you're seeing a lot more supply chain growth, sophistication. They're starting to see more electronics products into Vietnam. Okay, Vietnam is really strong in shoes, a lot of apparel, clothing. If you look at like Uniqlo, they're making a lot of like shirts in Vietnam. If you look at New Balance shoes, they're making a lot of that in Vietnam. And if you look at backpacks, bags, a lot of this can be made in Vietnam. Okay, so those are some of the advantages. You can make these at a lower cost compared to China. However, on the flip side, one big difference is Vietnam right now, because of the surge in demand, especially from these big companies. It's only, I mean, in terms of MOQs, a lot of these factories want full container loads, like at least one container MOQ. So we're not talking about like 500 units sourcing from China. We're talking about a full container load. So depending on your product size, that could be thousands, that could be even tens of thousands of products before they want to talk to you. The reason is because supply and demand, right? There's so much demand going into Vietnam, especially from those big companies like Nike, Under Armour, Uniqlo. They're not as ready to take on the small, Amazon sellers, unless maybe you're a 7 or 8 figure seller. You can commit to those containers. Then you want to consider Vietnam. All right. I think that one common mistake is people feel that Vietnam is another China. There are differences. The differences in the culture, the way of doing business. For example, Vietnam tends to be more blunt, more direct. Chinese suppliers may say yes to everything, but Vietnam may not be as appeasing to that. And if you do get to visit Vietnam, there's less whining and dining. In China, people, they say that the concept of guanxi, the relationships, are very important, and a lot of the deals are actually done not in the conference room, but like the dinner table, right, or like the karaoke parlor. So in Vietnam, it's less like that. It's more by the books, more direct. Okay, another key difference is in terms of the speed sourcing from Vietnam. It's going to be slower than China. Why? Because many of these types of products, the raw materials are not available in Vietnam. They're not available domestically. Where do they get it? many of them come from China, right? So many of like the textiles, the apparel, the fabrics, the machinery, many of them come from China, right? So if you consider on your order, if your supplier has to import those raw materials from China into Vietnam before they can start production, that's going to add to your lead time. Okay, so you have to plan your inventory forecasting a lot more carefully when it comes to Vietnam, because it's not like China. China is a one-stop shop. Everything is available domestically. These other countries are not one-stop shops. Okay, I want to highlights. Okay, let's see. We have some questions. So Chinedu, thanks for the summary. Yes, 9 a.m., 9 p.m., 6 days a week. That's 996 culture in China. Well, I don't think any other country has that. If you guys do know of a similar work culture in your country, let me know. All right. How do we get connected online with Vietnam sellers? Really good question, Hasib. So, obviously there's online resources like Alibaba, global sources. There could be some coverage, but it's not as comprehensive as China. You can try Google searches, because in Vietnam, Google works. There's trade associations that you can talk to. And one other quick tip I'd like to share with you guys, because Hasib asked this question. There's this one kind of like a trick that I like to use if you're importing to the US. The US Customs and Border Patrol, they have records of all of the imports coming into the country, right? So if you're looking to source, like, let's say, shoes from Vietnam, and you want to find out, hey, I'm looking at my shoes, my New Balances are imported from Vietnam and they're sold in the US. Wouldn't it be cool if I could find out where New Balance is manufacturing their product in Vietnam? Like, wouldn't it be cool if I could find their factory, right? So there's a way you can do that. You can check through the US Customs Border Patrol. I know that the simplest way to do that is if you use a tool like Jungle Scout. They actually have this supplier database search that lets you search through the supplier database. So you can type in like New Balance shoes and find out where they're importing from. It's not 100%. It's not, but it's another tool in the toolkit. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. The U.S. Customs Border Patrol. The thinking is, if this factory in Vietnam can make shoes that are good enough for New Balance, they're probably going to be good enough for my brand, right? So that can cut out on some of the legwork. Hope that helps. Let's keep going, guys. Great question. All right. So next, I'd like to cover the United States, the American dream, sourcing domestically from the US. I think one big thing. Okay, let's talk about the pros first. The pros is, obviously, if you can source in the same country, the same time zone, the same language, the same culture, it's just so much easier, right? You don't have to deal with all of the late nights, early mornings, the miscommunications, etc. And also in terms of the shipping times, it's a lot faster shipping domestically. It's a lot cheaper, and you don't have to deal with any duties, any tariffs at all, right? And also you're supporting the local economy, which feels good if you're in the US. And I feel like the brand, made in USA, if you see that on the label, that carries a premium, right? I think that the quality expectation will be higher, and you can probably sell it for a higher price, right? So those are some of the big benefits. But on the other hand, the US right now, if you look at historically, US used to do manufacturing in like the 60s and the middle of the 20th century. There were car makers, and there were factories, right? But a lot of that has simply gone out the door with globalization in the past 20-30 years, right? In the chase of cheaper labor, all of that stuff has been outsourced to China and to these other countries that we're talking about. So to try to bring all that stuff back, that's going to be really hard. I mean, one example is just the lack of engineers. If you try to if you want to get something made in China, and if you go on Alibaba, if you give them some specifications, a lot of times in-house, they have an engineer that can really just like sketch that out, map that out for you, do a technical drawing, et cetera, and to do it, right? The US manufacturers, they're not going to do that. They don't have anyone in-house. You're going to have to provide all of that. And then in terms of, if you want to get like a tool or like a mold made in the US, it's going to be a lot more expensive, if at all, if they can even make it, right? So the US is really not a one-stop shop. It's very limited when it comes to that. Also, in terms of the product selection, I mean, most of the products are not available in the US. I think the couple of exceptions is like fashion and apparel products, clothing. There's clothing like fashion districts in Los Angeles, in New York. There's some hotbeds of manufacturing locally, but it's not going to be as widespread. I'd like to highlight some savvy entrepreneurs and Amazon sellers. They've actually took this into their own hands. They actually bought out like a barn across the street from them in middle America, and then they bought like the equipment. They learned to make their products themselves. They hired some local people to come in to do the manufacturing. So think of the entrepreneurial drive, guys. I mean, it is possible to do this yourself, if you have the wherewithal and depending on your products, right? But I just want to be clear that it's not going to be so easy to source from the US. Okay, it is possible, but it's not going to be so easy. All right. So after that, let me see. Hasib says, what is the best country to source for Amazon Middle East and Australia? For Amazon Middle East and Australia, it depends. Australia, you can see that they do have duty-free agreements with Vietnam that we just talked about a minute ago. But it really depends on your product. I can't say that there's one that's best. If anyone is selling in Amazon Australia or Middle East, please let us know where you're sourcing from. There's actually another destination that I'm not going to cover today, that's sourcing from Europe, especially Eastern Europe, countries like Turkey, countries like Poland, because geographically they're closer to Europe. Labor costs are lower than Western European countries, and there are pockets of manufacturing there. So I'm going to share an event that we're doing coming up very soon where you'll be able to learn more about that, Hasib. All right, but that's a really good question. And Hasib said, great tip for sourcing. Yes, thank you. All right, so to summarize, China, India, Mexico, Vietnam, and USA. Pretty much China is still the sourcing king. India is the fastest riser. Mexico is up and coming, but more laid back culture. It's closer, it's cheaper, the trend towards near shoring, right? But you're going to have to educate the manufacturers, hold their hands. Vietnam, I would say it's mainly for the big players. It's harder to find factories, but there are free trade agreements, especially with Europe, Australia, and Southeast Asia, and USA. It's not a one-stop shop, but there are some pockets of manufacturing and some benefits if you can do that. All right. Next, I know you're probably thinking, can I manufacture my product in this country? So I wanted to give you a snapshot, just some examples of the type of products that you can get in each country. Okay, so let's say you're sourcing a metal product. China is able to do this for you. Whether it's stainless steel, it's aluminum alloy, it's food grade, it's cheap. Pretty much they can do this for you. Okay, India can do some metals as well. Okay, less so with the other countries I find, but India's main difference, when I visited India in 2019, one of my products is a metal product. It's a kitchen product, and it's made out of aluminum alloy. So China can do this. They have all the tooling. I visited their factory. I asked manufacturer in India if they can do it. They said, sorry, we cannot. Like the metals in India are simpler. They're less like, alloy, like different blends. And more of them are like, hand finished, versus in China, they have all these like stamping equipments, these huge machines to really automate the whole thing. Okay, so that's one difference. Another example is in terms of wood products. They're available in China, India, Mexico, and Vietnam. India, I feel like especially, is really good with wood products. They have a lot of natural resources in terms of their wood. If you're looking at toys, I think China is your best bet. China just has the whole supply chain to do all of that in terms of experience. They're quite experienced with the whole they've been doing this for decades. We do see some pockets of toys with India, like the more wooden type toys, and you're seeing more toys being made in Vietnam. But I would say China is still the big leader. In terms of clothing or textiles, if we want to do like natural type fabrics like cottons, for example, linen, etc., then I would say China, India, Mexico, Vietnam, and USA, they can all do it. USA especially, it can be good for more high-end fashion apparel. Just side story, my mom is a retired fashion designer, so she was manufacturing locally in Los Angeles. There's a fashion district in downtown LA, so she had a small workshop, and she's able to source all these the materials locally. They can do like custom dyeing locally. You can get like a lot of the like embellishments, like lace trim, etc. You can get all that locally in the U.S. I'm surprised a lot of people don't know that, but you can do that in the U.S. Obviously, the price tag is going to be higher, just because U.S. labor is more expensive. Some of that stuff is imported from China, but it is possible to do this in the US. If you're doing synthetic fabrics like a polyester, non-natural, China is still the best bet in this because China has the technology to make these blends. So when I went to India, for example, I asked them about a type of bag. At that time, it's actually a stroller organizer bag. So it's like a synthetic polyester nylon blend. And I asked them if they can do it. They couldn't do it because they don't have the raw material made in India. So they would have to find a supplier in China, import that, and then do the cut, sew, and assembly in India. So India struggles when it comes to synthetics. China is still the leader in that. I mean, India can do it if it's like leather, they can do it if it's like jute or cotton, but if it's like synthetic blend, it's a lot harder. Same with Vietnam. When you look at those type of backpacks, like those waterproof, like fancy fabrics, most of the times those materials, they're imported from China. Some of those factories in those other countries like India, in terms of the machinery, if you ever visit their factory, look closely, you can see the machinery, many of them are made in China. So they have to import that machinery into their countries to do it, just because China has the head start. They're still the sourcing king. Okay. When it comes to eco-friendly products, China, India, and Vietnam, they can do it for you. They have the resources to do it. Especially India. India is especially strong with eco-friendly types of products. Their culture is really pervasive, really emphasizing eco-friendly. All right. In terms of home decor, furniture, China, India, Mexico are good for that. In terms of electronics, okay, tech products, China's the leader in that. Okay, China's still the world leader. Some countries are up and coming, like Vietnam. Apple has some factories there. India, we're seeing that Apple is starting to make investments. We're seeing some companies make investments there, but they're not quite there yet. So if you're sourcing electronics, definitely China and Vietnam. And however, anything plastic molds, plastic injection molding, China's still the world leader in that. They have the sophisticated technology, they have the experience. I mean, they've been doing this for longer than these other guys. So if you're trying to get like that type of injection mold from like the USA, you're really going to struggle. And it might make sense to even get the mold done in China and bring that into your factory in the US if you want them to do that. That could save you some money. All right. So, I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg, guys. When it comes to these, like a sourcing checklist for product categories, I mean, is this helpful? I'm curious. Is this helpful to you guys? Let me know if so. I'm trying to do everything I can to help you guys source your products so you can succeed in your business in 2022. Let me know if this is helpful. All right. Hasib, yes. Will Ukraine-Russia conflict affect air and sea shipping from China? I mean, it's already affecting the global supply chain. Ukraine, there's natural resources there like fertilizer. So it is having a ripple effect in the whole supply chain. I'm not sure if the specific, like the amount of the effect, but they're definitely, anytime it's like, it's like what they say, like the butterfly effect. If there's like a butterfly that flaps its wings in Brazil, like it's going to cause an effect in the US, like, tens of thousands of miles away. This whole global, we're all connected everywhere, right? I mean, just coronavirus, right? I mean, it started in, like a wildlife market in China, in Wuhan, and then everybody all over the world, just a few weeks later, everyone got it, right? So everything has a ripple effect. Everything is interconnected, whether it's sourcing, whether it's supply chain, whether it's health, right? Everything is so well connected in the world. I mean, just the fact that we're able to speak to each other, and Hasib and Chinedu in Florida, and Lloyd in the Philippines and Pachi in Australia, right? We're all interconnected. Everything is interconnected, guys. So Pachi says very helpful. Thank you, Gary. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. So I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce this new project that I've created for you guys. So I know that sourcing, now it's getting more complicated, but there's solutions out there. And I think as entrepreneurs, to succeed, we have to pivot very quickly. So I've invited some of the top sourcing experts to really deep dive into the different countries that you can source from. And then I've created this new event. I'm super excited, that's called the Seven Figure Sourcing Summit. So we're going to have an online event dedicated to just sourcing and shipping and supply chain. This is going to be June 13th to the 14th. It's a 2-day online event, and I'm invited some of the top sourcing experts from these different countries that we talked about. So if you want to learn, how do I find suppliers in Vietnam? We have someone that's going to walk you through it. How do I find suppliers in Mexico? We're going to have someone to walk you through it, right? We're going to break down product categories, over 100 different product categories. So if you want to know where can I source my product from, you're going to get the answer. All right. So this is the Seven Figure Sourcing Summit. This is the first time I've ever done this. I've done this to help you guys. Because I've seen all of your questions. There's a lot of interest. As we've seen, sourcing from Mexico, 38% of you guys want to source from Mexico. So we have an expert that's going to help you walk through that. All right. So we're gonna have this online. It's going to be at sevenfiguresourcingsummit.com, and you're really going to learn how to source from A to Z. So we only talked about some of the top, the tip of the iceberg today, right? So we're gonna have experts from sourcing from China. We have one of the top sourcing agents sourcing from China. Even the big aggregators go to him to optimize their supply chain. How to negotiate better costs, how to streamline their shipping. He's going to walk you all through all of that in this online masterclass. Also sourcing from Europe. I just had a new addition. I found someone, a sourcing expert in Germany. So he helps 7-8 figure sellers source from Europe, from different countries in Europe, like Poland, Australia. Literally, they have coverage all over Europe. So he's going to show you how you can source from Europe, what type of products you can source from Europe. So this is really useful. Like, let's say if you're selling in EU, if you can get it within Europe, it's going to be faster, it's going to be cheaper. It could be duty free within the EU countries, but you can't just go on Alibaba to find these guys, right? So that's why I invited these sourcing experts to really walk you through this, all of these different countries. So it's almost like, a Lonely Planet for sourcing all over the world, right? So we're going to have, an expert from Vietnam, expert from US, all right? And then we're also going to have daily live panel discussions where we're going to go around the table. We'll ask these 8-figure sellers, 7-figure sellers, what's your number one tip on negotiations? We're going to ask shipping experts, how can we save money? What do you see when it comes to like the shipping costs for the next couple of months as we're planning for Q4? So literally, this is going to be the premier event when it comes to sourcing. Nobody's ever done this before. You've seen other events online, talking about just selling in general, PPC, but we're just going to dive in on sourcing, because I feel like sourcing is so important right now. With the rising costs, with the whole, all of the delays coming, it's so important. And the real money, like sourcing experts, like supply chain experts say, the real money is made in the buying, not the selling, right? So if you can source your product at a lower price, better quality, faster lead time, you're going to be ahead of your competitors. Think about that in terms of the pricing, your profitability, your margin. That's where it all starts from. So it might not be as sexy as, PPC optimizing your listing, but this is like the fundamental, guys. This is where the real, businesses like the Apples, the Nikes, how they're able to win. All right. So I'm offering a free pass to all you guys that are watching today. So you can get your free pass at 7figuresourcingsummit.com. All right. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And Hasim says, yes, it'll be quite a useful session. I'm generally struggling in sourcing. I attended 7-Figure Sellers Summit too. It was a great learning. You're welcome. And Hasib says, sourcing is the heart of e-commerce, much needed session. Yes, absolutely. So not only that, not only is it an online event, I wanted to bring you more, right? So I'm offering additional help. So you're going to get additional free bonuses. If you get a free pass, you'll get a done for you sourcing checklist with over 100 different product categories. So my team and I were working on this. We're talking to people all over the world. So you'll learn exactly what products you can get in each country. So, I mean, we talked about like maybe 10 product categories here. We're going to cover up to 100. So we're going to get to your product category. If you want your product category to make sure that it's covered, drop it in the chat right now, which product category you're selling in, and then we'll make sure that's included in the final bonus in the report, the sourcing checklist. All right. So I'm really, I'm doing the work for you. I mean, this is the hard work, guys. I mean, rather than you spending like, I've seen some people, they wasted a ton of time, talking to people in India, in Mexico, they couldn't do it for them, right? So I'm going to shortcut all of that for you. You'll know exactly where to go to get what. It's, again, I love that analogy, like the Lonely Planet, right? So if you want like, a nice beach to go diving, you go to this country, right? If you want to just go party at that other beach, then you go to that country, right? But if you really want like a good quality product, that's eco-friendly, you go there. All right. So you guys will get all of that. The second bonus is you're going to get a step-by-step negotiations guide for negotiating the best prices, payment terms, packaging, and more with your suppliers. So this is going to give you a leg up on your competition. Bonus 3 is an RFQ, request for quotation, done for you template that you can use to quickly contact suppliers. By putting this together, it's going to skyrocket your response rates. It's just going to save you a lot of time as you're doing your sourcing. And then if you want to outsource it to find a sourcing agent, I put together a sourcing agent checklist as well. So there's 11 questions you got to ask before you hire any sourcing agent. Also share 3 red flags before you hire any sourcing agent that you got to be aware of, all right? So you don't get taken advantage of, all right? So is this helpful, guys? Let me know. Is there anything else that you like to see? Let me know. So this will be at the 7-Figure Sourcing Summit, June 13th to the 14th at 7-Figure Sourcing Summit.com. All right. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We have a few minutes before we got to run. Hasib says sourcing is the heart of e-commerce and mobile gaming accessories and office products. Okay, good. We will make a note of that. Mobile gaming accessories and office products. Okay. In terms of office products, can you be more specific? Are we talking about paper? Are we talking about plastics? Are we talking about furniture? Can you be more specific? Because I want to be specific for you to help you guys. All right. Any other questions about sourcing? I know we covered a lot today. Just to recap. So to recap the countries at a glance. All right. So again, I would say, China, it's inevitable. You can't just leave China for most products. India's fast riser, good for handmade, unique, eco-friendly, lower cost, but longer shipping times. Mexico is Pura Vida, laid back culture. You really got to teach them how to make these Amazon type products. No tariffs, quick shipping, closer shipping. Vietnam for the big players. Some free trade agreements, but they really want full container loads MOQ. So if you're only at 500 units, don't even bother. Don't waste your time. USA is not a one-stop shop. There are certain pockets of product you can get, but it doesn't have that much coverage. All right. Okay, guys. So definitely pick up your free pass. Highly recommend. It's coming up in less than 2 weeks. If there's any topic that you would like to see, definitely let me know in the chat right now. I know I see that Hasib says labels, chalk markers, desk organizers. Okay, we will make a note of that. We'll put that in. Thank you. Anything else, guys? Any other questions before we run? Otherwise, it's been a pleasure. I thank you guys for coming on. Good luck with your sourcing. And yeah, I think this will be 80-20 for you guys because there's no other, I've literally, I've been doing sourcing, as you guys know, for over a decade. I've been on the ground in China, and I've invited all of these experts, sourcing from Mexico, from India, from Vietnam, quality control experts, lab testing. Now, if you're selling on Amazon, one of the biggest mistakes is not getting your lab certifications done. You could get suspended. So we have an expert talking about lab testing. We have a 7-figure seller that's going to show you 11 tips about sourcing. He's worked for a big company a big audio equipment company in the UK. He worked there as their sourcing director for literally decades. So this guy, he is a real professional. He's been doing this for years. Chris Davey, and he's going to be on. He's on the ground in Shenzhen, so he really gets deep into the sourcing details. Eight-figure seller Cameron Walker, he's he's in the toys category. He's in China as well. So I think this will be super valuable as well. Okay. Please invite freight forwarders too. Done. We have Unicargo CEO Rafael Elbas. He's going to give you a masterclass on freight, on shipping, on logistics, how to save money, trends, what not to do beyond just the ABCs. That's already done. Please try to join the panel discussion, Hasib. It will be at 8 p.m. Eastern time, June 13th and 14th. So you can ask questions to him if you have questions about freight forwarders. Okay. I mean, shipping is so important. Definitely interested in planters and plant accessories. Okay, will do. I'm making a note of that. If you don't speak Spanish, would it be a challenge sourcing from Mexico? It will be challenging, yes. That's why we have Mexico sourcing expert to come, and she may be able to help you, and possibly directly. I know that she helps certain sellers as well, but yes, that's one of the language barrier challenges. You probably want to have someone that speaks Spanish, especially Spanish from Mexico, because Spain Spanish, like there's some differences in the words as well. It's kind of like American English and British English. There are some differences as well. All right, so I hope that helps, guys. I'm just gonna put the link in the chat one more time. If you haven't got your free pass yet, definitely get it now. And then also, if you WLC says interested in sourcing from Mexico, yes, it will. You will learn how to source from Mexico and ask your questions. So, and also, if you know anyone else that's interested, feel free to share. I feel like e-commerce can be kind of an isolated endeavor. I know a lot of times our friends and family, they don't understand this whole e-commerce thing, but we understand it. So if you do have a friend or someone that's doing ecom, if they want to bump up their sourcing, definitely invite them to check this out. 7-Figure Sourcing Summit, June 13th, 14th. All right, so thank you so much, guys. I'm curious, if you could drop in the chat, what was the number one takeaway? What is the number one thing that you got from today's training? I'm curious. If you can let me know, that'd be great. All right. So again, I thank all of you. It's been great, and we will see you guys very soon. And Pachi says interest in rattan products. Okay, we will put that in rattan. Excellent. And then let me just take down the share screen. Yeah, and if you have any other questions about sourcing in general, or what you like to see, maybe a topic you like to see, we're going to cover negotiations, we're going to cover quality control, we're going to cover advanced sourcing, we're going to cover shipping, we're covering these different countries. Like even on the website, we're adding new content that I have to ask my team to add. We're literally adding new things every day. All right. Pachi's takeaway is the overview comparisons between the countries. Definitely. I mean, you got to know where to go to get your product, right? Okay, guys, thanks so much. We hope to see you at the 7-Figure Sourcing Summit, and good luck to all of you, and take care, guys. See you at the next session. Bye, everyone.